Allergy season is here, and weather conditions could determine the intensity of your symptoms. We look at the cause and effect, plus how climate change is impacting allergy season, starting earlier and lasting longer. We talk to a farmer who is using local honey to treat symptoms, plus we sit down with an allergist about the most common triggers and how to choose the remedy right for you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this ABC 10 Plus special on weather impact and allergy season. I'm ABC 10 weather impact meteorologist Monica Woods. We are just at the start of spring allergy season, and many are already feeling the impact. The Climate Prediction Center is forecasting a warmer and drier spring for a large part of the United States, including here in Northern California. Those conditions, along with other environmental factors, are shifting our allergy seasons. Tree pollen, mold, and other spores begin to fill the atmosphere earlier and tend to stick around longer, triggering allergic responses for those with seasonal allergies. According to the CDC, about 1 in 3 adults suffers from seasonal allergies. They also find 1 in 4 kids have a seasonal allergy. The Asthma and Allergy Network reports more than half of those with allergies say it does impact their quality of life. Something you may not know is the weather conditions contribute to allergies. And so many times on our shift changes, my colleague meteorologist Rob Carmark and I will talk about those lifestyle impacts from weather forecasting. Right now, we're talking a lot about allergies.
You know, if you're a meteorologist, you're worried about temperature, you're worried about rain, but we worry about wind a lot in the spring because we know in the background, it's one of the big factors in how people are affected by the weather, their allergies. So, you know, forecasting just numbers is one thing, but really taking that extra step to figure out, well, what is going on in this kind of weather can really help relay the message to people, okay, this is what I would worry about today. And right now we're in allergy season.
I know. And it's so funny, too, because when we go out in public and people will ask, hey, I hate to bug you about this. And it's like, well, I am doing this all day, so bug me. It's not really bugging me. But one of the days I got stuck and I went, I knew it was going to be like this, but I don't like getting stuck in it. So it's kind of a personal approach when we're forecasting the weather.
I was just at a Little League game the other day, right? And it was so windy and there was stuff blowing around everywhere. I'm like, saying it on camera is one thing, but living in it is another. But I'm glad that we spend the time to understand how this all works because it really informs how we understand it, how it affects our personal life, and then how we can share it all with you.
And I think that's really a unique part of certainly our weather team too, is just that we do communicate really the lifestyle aspect of what is going on right now. You know, the summer season, it's the stray shower that comes around and somebody's got a wedding. Oh my gosh, wait a minute, I did not get a tent. Right now, it really is about the different environmental factors and certainly the weather, how it's changing, that may be impacting people's day-to-day. As you mentioned, Little League's really important, soccer, you got, gardening going on right now, too.
And this is the tough one. And, you know, in the background, too, there's the things that we know, which we'll talk about, mostly related to plants. But I talked to an allergist a couple allergy seasons ago, and she told me, you know, it's really tough sometimes because sometimes it's pets. Pets during this time go from their winter coat, they start to shed a little bit too. So there's so many factors and facets to this that are very overly complex when you at least look at it in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you boil it down to, this is what I know about the weather today, this is what I know about this time of season, and this is how I can help you.
Okay, you have pets and you have kids. You're probably dragging a whole lot of pollen into the house.
I'm gonna have to dig out the old N95 mask just for my daily outfit, because that's the only way I'm gonna avoid a lot of this stuff.
I know, washing the hair, the face, everything, and everybody that's coming into the house, pets included. It's all about it.
And the one thing I just wanna add too is that we, you know, at the end of the day, I think a simple forecast is the one that's going to help guide you to make decisions. And for a lot of people, they just want to know, hey, are allergies bad today or not? And we can help you figure that out.
Okay, and you're going to show us step by step kind of some of the ways that we go through our metrics to make sure that that forecast is delivered in a timely and accurate way.
Exactly. Zyrtec or not, it will help you decide. All right, let's connect the dots between weather and allergies and how it affects you, because there's a lot going on here, but at the very end, there's a simple conclusion that I think makes it very helpful to understand our situation in the world of allergies. At a most basic understanding here, where we are right now is past the vernal equinox, so that's the beginning of spring. So we roughly on that day have about 12 hours of daytime and 12 hours of nighttime. But in the background, we all understand as we move deeper into spring, the plants really thrive in these conditions. Longer days, on and off rain, the soil temperatures are coming up, so they are ready to go, and they do. However, at the same time, we're also going through a changing of the seasons from winter into spring, and this battle back and forth between pressure systems, high and low. In the atmosphere, it's always trying to find an equilibrium as far as pressure, high and low, and trying to find that balance in between. As you do that, in between, what you get is wind. That's literally the air trying to balance itself out. Oftentimes during the peak of summer or during the peak of winter, you have more established areas of pressure. There's not a lot of changes, so the winds are generally can be on the weak side. But when you're going through these big transitions where you're starting to see early season heat waves or late season storms, you get a lot of wind in between. So just in the background, this is, I think, very interesting. If you look at the actual data for Sacramento, just as an example, our average annual wind speed on any given day is generally kind of breezy, right around 8 miles per hour. But during March, April, May, and June, you can see technically it is much above average. These are some of the windiest months that you'll find out of the 12 in our local area. So we've got two things happening at the same time. Plant growth is extreme and on the rise, and at the same time, it just happens to be very windy around here. As the two intersect, you have a lot of pollen and a lot of opportunities for it to blow around. Moving deeper into the season, once our spring weather and windy season starts to die down, we have our very localized and microclimate based delta breeze. And what this is usually on a hot summer day in other parts of the country, it's just hot and then it's really humid and warm overnight. But in some places that can get the delta breeze, the hotter it gets, the more of an opportunity that we create our own breeze coming in off the ocean. You know the classic delta breeze. It helps to cool us down. We generally like this. But what it does is it adds on more windy opportunities well into the summer. When you take a look at what we have for allergies, from February to about April, it's mostly trees, and then it switches over to grasses, and then it switches over to weeds. But we have windy chances the entire time for all three of those seasons. Now, how it relates to you is allergies are very specific to people, and it's very physical. You literally ingest the pollen through your nasal cavity, then your body starts to react to it. It creates little antibodies that are trying to work with the pollen. You ingest more, and that collision course right there is how you have allergic reactions. It's just basically too much going on for your body. Runny nose, itchy eyes, sore throat. All of those symptoms are related to if you are related to the specific pollen that you're ingesting at the time. Now, obviously, there are so many variables. A lot could happen with this, but if you just look at the time of year, the traditional growing seasons for some of the main things that affect people, and the wind, which provides the most opportunity to really see most of the pollen airborne and opportunities for you to ingest it, you can get a general forecast going that really can help you make decisions. Some days it's just not the right time of year for grass, and if you're allergic to grass and it's not windy, then it's a low risk. But if you're allergic to trees and it's a very windy day in spring and the trees that are near you that you're allergic to, well, all of a sudden you've got an extreme example. Now you probably have to take precautions, limiting time outdoors or other things that you can do, because you can't stop the wind and you can't stop the pollen, but you can create more barriers and more chances for you to avoid ingesting a lot of the pollen, because that's how the whole allergy process starts. Now, there are forecast challenges to this, to say the least. Data to how we understand what's actually out there can be sparse, and it changes very often. Big national networks that you probably have heard of or even Googled, they've got big gaps both in areas that they test and also how often they test, because it can change every hour, week, and every weather event. Trust me, the wind changes all day long, every day, and seasonally it can change a lot. When you actually look at the forecasts that are out there, they're a little bit murky. Some of the stuff is proprietary, meaning they have their own methods and you just see the end result, so you can't re-examine how they're getting to that point. And some sound very official but are not necessarily official. And what I mean by that, they're not standardized, they're not regulated. The thing that comes to mind with me, say for the weather, big national group that we have that forecasts the weather for you from the government, the National Weather Service, That's all regulated, standardized, it's easy to understand, and you can get in the data and really understand it. Some of these other methods, it's not as easy. And the other final thing is that allergies are very personal. You need tests to be precise for you. Are you really allergic to this, or is there something else going on? Because a lot of the information and how people experience allergies can be anecdotal. Let me just point out some of the data gaps. We've got the National Allergy Bureau, which is made up of a bunch of allergists, more than 7,000 across the country. Obviously, their heart is in the right place. They're doing great work trying to inform people, hey, this is what to worry about right now. But some of the limitations just are spatial. There's just a lot of gaps in between the official testing stations, and they don't do it every day or every hour. Sometimes it's only once a month. So you simmer all of this down, and it can be tricky, but there are things that are very helpful to understand. One of the things happening in the background is that we are just seeing longer seasons everywhere. Just for example, for Reno, their growing season has grown by 96 days. That's just one example. Locally, the warmer that it is, the more chances on the tail ends of that bell curve that we can see plants grow, either early or late, and yes, more pollen swirling around to affect you. So this is what it really boils down to. The good news about things about Northern California is that everything grows here. So that's great. That's why we're the breadbasket of the world. The bad news is that everything grows here. So the chances are that something that you're allergic to, even if it's very specific, probably grows here and probably nearby. And we also live in a very windy place. These three things make Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, and Northern California one of the most allergy prone in the country. And we're going to see many more places join this club because as the climate changes and we see more windy conditions everywhere and longer growing seasons, it's going to get worse all over. We've got Brendan Minchef with more on that angle of the story, and it's very interesting.
Our free ABC10 Plus TV streaming app has so much to offer. Get your news live and on demand 24/7 so you can watch the news when you want. There's breaking news, extended forecast, and so much more. We have everything you need to get through your day and ready for the weekend. We've got you covered on money-saving tips, travel, entertainment, and sports. Download the free ABC10 Plus app on your smart TV and popular streaming devices like Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and more. ABC10. We stand for you 24/7.
Welcome back. We are talking allergies and the relationship with weather. Joining me right now is fellow ABC10 weather impact team meteorologist Brendan Minchef. And Brendan talked to our colleague Rob Carmark earlier today just about the intersection of weather and how it relates to our lifestyle. One thing that is striking is kind of the universal reach of allergies, and that is changing.
Yeah, simply because the planet's warming, and that's giving us a longer growing season for allergies. And allergies, I mean, 25% or more of Americans have seasonal allergies. And so this is something that impacts all of us and a lot of us across the country. And we're seeing about 2 additional weeks of above average temperatures in the springtime. So that means we're seeing potentially 2 more weeks of allergies for some folks as well, because temperatures are warmer. So that means plants can bloom earlier, which means there's more time for that pollen to be released.
You know, we sit in the weather department a lot of times and we talk about those relationships and also about the shifting patterns of that as well. I'm not sure that a large population understands how deeply connected climate change is, and particularly to this huge agricultural community.
Yeah, I mean, earlier or later frost dates, right? In the fall, and then earlier final freeze dates in the spring across parts of Northern California are happening because of climate change, and that's extending the growing season. And so, you know, we often think of allergies in the spring, rightfully so, but there's kind of a secondary allergy season in the fall. And so when we're adding time of warmer days, not just in the springtime, but also more warm fall days, we're kind of extending that allergy season on both ends of the spectrum. And we know that spring and fall are the fastest warming, especially spring months, seasons, I should say, in terms of climate change.
You know, and it's interesting, too, with climate change, some plants go dormant. So this is just kind of the beginning of what we can expect. There may be plants that are blooming that we don't even touch right now. So I know you've got more on the details of that.
Yeah, we'll break down the numbers a little bit more at the wall, but the takeaway here really is all about we're adding more time to the growing season and more time to the allergy season. All right, so I was mentioning how spring is getting warmer. Here's a map from our friends at Climate Central, showing us exactly where in the country spring is getting warmer the fastest and by how much. And you notice a lot of that's in the desert Southwest, parts of West Texas into New Mexico, Arizona, and even the deserts of Southern California are warming up by anywhere from 3 to 4 degrees above average. And this is since 1970. We're seeing average springtime temperatures warming by 4+ degrees in parts of the Southwest. And that's not unique to the desert Southwest in the United States, but basically everywhere in the United States is seeing spring warming up. And when we look at each season here, fall is warming the slowest, but we're still seeing fall warming up. Summer's warming up, but notice spring, the second fastest warming season of them all, behind only winter, which kind of makes sense. Winter is typically the coldest, so when we're starting to add in more heat, you would kind of expect winter to be warming the fastest. But let's talk about those spring numbers a little bit more, and specifically for Sacramento. So we usually use 1970 as a baseline and compare our numbers to 1970. On average, we're seeing about 2 additional degrees of springtime warming in Sacramento over the last 50 years or so. And that's not only every day, but particularly we're seeing 2 additional weeks plus 14 days of springtime warming. In other words, that would be 14 additional days above average compared to 50 years ago in 1970. And you can obviously see that trend line increasing as we get closer and closer to today. But it's not just spring, like I was talking about a few minutes ago. It's also fall. Fall is warming up as well. Again, not necessarily as quickly as springtime, but fall, when we have warmer fall days, the plants don't go dormant as fast. So we have more time for plants to continue to spread their pollen, right? Or as the leaves start to change, it takes longer. And we know that there's kind of this secondary allergy season in the fall. So fall's warming up, but we're also seeing about an additional week of above average days compared to 1970. You see that number for Sacramento specifically is +8. So the big picture takeaway here is that we're seeing a longer growing season, not just here in Sacramento or Northern California, but all across the country. You can see that spring freeze date since 1895 has gotten later and later. On average, 5 degrees or more, 5 days or later into the spring season. But then you also notice fall, which is the darker line. It's also getting later into the season. So what's happening is our growing season is extending on both sides of the spectrum here. So both getting earlier in the spring and getting later in the fall, and that's extending our allergy season. And because of climate change, right? This isn't an easy fix. It's not a year-to-year thing. This is a decade-to-decade thing where we're seeing these growing seasons getting longer and longer, and allergy season getting longer and longer as well. And coming up after the break, we sat down with an allergist to discuss how to treat seasonal allergies.
We are in day 1 of a weather impact alert. This is for rain, for snow, and for wind.
Be flood ready and expect major mountain impacts.
It's that snow-rain mix that drivers have been dealing with here.
We're already seeing the impact of the storm.
We're planning for those changes.
Be prepared for treacherous road conditions.
Stay fire ready.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on ABC10+.
During allergy season, store shelves can go bare for those of us trying to get some over-the-counter relief. An alternative is seeking out local remedies like honey. The idea is to build immunity by eating something that is made by the bees pollinating our trees, grasses, and flowers. James Chinchillo is a local farmer who says the key is to make sure the honey contains some of the pollen carried by the wind.
That pollen is typically the type of pollen that we as humans respond adversely to. We add pollen to some of our honeys. We actually have what we call flower power honey, and it's a wildflower honey from Northern California, and then we add more pollen to it.
Oh, right on, flower power. All right, James says he's noticing more and more people wanting to know more about where their food is coming from. He noticed this when they opened up Lodi Blooms for the public to come cherry picking. He's excited about people wanting to learn more about agriculture and how it's part of our daily lives. So we know a lot of people have questions when it comes to allergies, so we brought in an expert. Joining me is Dr. Fonda Zhang, an allergist and immunologist from Kaiser Permanente. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a very busy time for you. Spring allergy season is in full swing. So what are we dealing with right now?
We are definitely in spring. Tree pollen tends to be the worst one during the spring. And as we get into summer, grass pollen will play a bigger role. And then weed pollens will start coming in towards the late summer, early fall.
Okay, and if somebody is exhibiting symptoms, what would that look like or feel like?
I'd say classic symptoms are itchy, so like itchy eyes, itchy nose, runny nose, sneezing, and congestion. That can drive a lot of people. It can drive people crazy. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of questions where people are wondering, is it a cold, flu, or is it allergies?
It does come up sometimes, and flu season was later this year, so there are some people who are kind of dealing with both. But that itchiness is the really classic sign of an allergic symptom versus being sick.
For some people that suffer from allergies, moving to or even taking a vacation to like the coast or going up to the mountains can help. Do you see that it's kind of regionally specific what people deal with?
Somewhat. So pollens tend to be localized, so different areas will have different pollens. Maybe if you go to a new area, the pollens are different. You're not allergic yet. But if you really were to move there after a couple seasons, you may become allergic to those pollens as well.
Okay, well, the Central Valley is a hotbed for agriculture, as we know. Does this area tend to kind of be more prolific in terms of allergy sufferers or pollen?
It does. Sacramento is the city of trees as far as up here. And then in general, California, we tend to have a pretty long season. You know, it's the winter, the spring comes a little early and fall comes a little late, and so we have a long pollen season here.
In terms of building tolerance, is it just staying on the medication or is it exposure to more pollens? How do people kind of deal with it and try to get some resistance up?
Yeah, so as far as the reaction to pollens, it's pretty much your body overreacting to something harmless. Regular exposure through allergy shots or sublingual tablets are an option to gradually build up your ability to tolerate allergens. Medications can help alleviate the symptoms. They're not really doing anything for how well you're able to tolerate it, but it stops your body from reacting so strongly so long as you take the medication.
Allergy shots do get a lot of headlines, and I think people still don't fully understand what I get allergy shots. That's why I'm saying this. Yes, but explain to me a little bit more about what allergy shots are.
Sure. So allergy shots are going to be a specific mix for what each individual person is allergic to. So someone who's cat allergic will have cat in their shots. Someone pollen allergic will have pollens. The idea is that we're showing your immune system a teeny tiny bit of what it's allergic to over and over and over again. And for lack of a better way of explaining it, your immune system just kind of gets bored. It stops overreacting quite so strongly. So it's that constant organized exposure that's helping to make you less sensitive to the allergens.
Can they do that for food?
We don't have it for food as far as a shot. There is something called oral immunotherapy that's been approved for peanuts, but only peanuts.
Do people tend to have more exhibited symptoms of even things that they're not allergic to when they're dealing with so many allergy reactions during spring season?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I would say specifically there's something called oral allergy syndrome where people get an itchy mouth with fruits and vegetables, raw fruits and vegetables. That can sometimes flare up when pollen counts are really high because everything's already so bothered.
Okay, so it may not be a food allergy. It could actually be just that oral allergy that you're going through.
I would say for raw fruits and vegetables specifically, that might be. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you start the process? Let's say somebody wants to go down the path of doing the allergy shots. It's not just go in and, hey, shoot me up with some grass and me.
No. So it is a commitment. It's kind of a journey that you're going to go on. So generally, we do recommend trying medications first because for a lot of people, medication is enough to control the symptoms. But if they're not enough, we can start allergy shots. Different offices will do it slightly differently, but generally, it'll be a weekly visit for somewhere between 6 to 8 months. And from there, you reach the highest dose, and then we'll space it out to monthly. The general recommendation is to continue for a course of 3 to 5 years.
Okay, and how do you know what you're going to be injecting somebody with? What kind of serum are they going to get? Because everyone's you said
different.
Everyone's unique.
Yeah, so we'll do testing first. There's two ways to do testing. One way is a blood draw, same as any other blood draw. You go to the lab, we get the results a few days later. The other option is go to your allergy office and get skin testing, where we actually prick the skin with the different allergens and we see what you react to. And then based on either of those results, we can do allergy shots.
Is there an age limit to that?
I would say not a really harsh cutoff. Generally, for school-age kids, before the age of 3, seasonal allergies haven't even really shown up yet. So we don't really recommend even testing before that age. And then there's not really an upper limit age cutoff. But the idea of allergy shots is that they're desensitizing you. And so if you do it earlier, you're hopefully getting that benefit a little sooner.
So with age, can allergies change? Can you become more allergic at certain times in your life? Or I was a kid, I never had allergies, and now I'm getting them.
You know, it's always possible. I would say it generally shows up in like childhood teens, but maybe if you move to a new location or maybe if you get a pet you never had one before, it's definitely possible. But mostly it shows up earlier in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of medication, let's say somebody says, well, I just kind of don't have that severe of allergies.
Sure.
How do they even work? I mean, we've got decongestants, we've got antihistamines, we've got nasal sprays. It feels like an endless supply or option for allergies.
No, it's true. And then in each of those categories you just listed, there's multiple versions of that same thing. So people will come saying, oh, I feel like I've tried everything when they've only really tried different allergy pills. So I would say the gold standard for allergies is a nasal steroid spray. And then those work best if you use them on a daily basis for at least a couple weeks in a row. Using them that one time then and there tends to not be that helpful. Allergy pills can be a good option for some quicker relief. They should help you within maybe about 30 minutes to an hour. But they sometimes when your allergies are really severe, they're not going to be enough.
And that's when you go see somebody like Dr. Zhang at Kaiser Permanente. Again, thank you so much for your time. We're going to be deep in it for a while here. Spring is sprung. All right, thanks again for your time.
All right, thank you so much.
On any windy spring day in the valley, you can almost hear people's allergies acting up. Our region is filled with trees, from parks to agriculture. And during allergy season, this means a lot of sniffles and sneezing. Is there anything you can do about it? ABC 10 meteorologist Rob Karamark spoke with a tree expert who says you can plan what trees you plant, and that could help.
One of the great things about the Central Valley is that everything grows here. And one of the bad things about the Central Valley is that, well, everything grows here, including the things that can make you sneeze. You see, when it comes to plants and pollen, that means there are a ton of varieties out there, and just one can send you sneezing. So experts say to get yourself tested first.
So I think the first thing would be just kind of understanding what allergies you have, right? What trees are going to be the worst for you in a certain time of year. Allergies come and go throughout the whole season, whether it's trees, grasses, they all have different time frames as far as when they're pollinating and when they're producing that pollen.
In some areas, sycamore trees define and line the historic areas like Land Park and East Sac. They look great, but can be a localized allergy factory.
Trees have a really high pollen count. They have a lot of dust that's affiliated with them. And so, having those around, this time of year when there's no rain, there's no moisture to hold that pollen, that it's not going to be fun for you.
There is one other way to improve your odds of avoiding some allergies. Some trees, like the Chinese pistache, have male or female variety, and choosing the female can reduce pollen. Also, some trees that don't have a flowering cycle, like maples, can cut pollen down as well.
From weather to climate to remedies, thank you for joining us on this Weather Impact Special on seasonal allergies. Remember, you can watch all our specials on the ABC 10 Plus streaming app. Download for free and watch on your TV.